Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the leading employee benefits and engagement platform.
Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. And today I'm really excited to have Ms. Leena Sahijwani, who is a seasoned HR leader with a successful track record in strategic HR leadership positions managing global portfolios. She's currently VP HR for Tata Group. Welcome to the show, Leena.
Thank you so much, Rohit, for having me over. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. And, I wanted to understand, how did you get into HR? What got you excited to be in the field of HR?
That's a good question. It's way long back, I think. I didn't have very detailed thinking around the process. Post my graduation, I was looking to do an MBA, and I got through an institute which specialized in HR, and that's how by default I landed in HR. I don't think it was a very informed decision at that point, but no regrets. I love being in HR space. In fact, early in my career, Rohit, I had also taken up a role in sales as a cross-functional move back in GSK. And, that time I had an option to continue in sales, but I chose to get back to, what I had studied at campus. HR is a passion for me, and I'm happy that, even though not by design, I landed where I did.
Very interesting. And, we're recording this during the COVID times, and I want to talk about how can companies onboard new employees into work culture, and what should HR leaders do in order to make sure that, the new employees who are getting onboarded get to understand the work culture of a company.
So, it's a very important question that you asked, Rohit, because you don't get a feel of the company as you're joining in.
Right.
And it's very difficult to replicate that feel virtually. And people can get lost if it's not done carefully. So for us, when we moved into the lockdown, of course, after a couple of weeks, we had to put some thoughts together to, onboard the offers that we had already made, to our prospective employees. So there is a good engagement that my team does ahead of somebody's joining to ensure that all required formalities are taken care of ahead of the joining. And, the first day at work is smooth. We go to the extent of figuring out if the employee, needs a laptop, is comfortable working through their own laptop, so that we can plan accordingly and make sure that, the person is up and running on day one. In addition, of course, from the organization standpoint, a bit more involvement of the manager and the team around to ensure that the person feels comfortable, and, also touch points that we have from HR through this journey to ensure that the person is kind of, settled in. At a group level, Rohit, we also launched Embrace, which is a digital induction module, for the Tata Group. And that module was hosted on Tata Tomorrow University, which is also something that we launched during the lockdown. So employees from across the group can go through the journey, which has been curated for them through Embrace, which has interesting facets of the Tata history, the Tata legacy, and also information around our businesses, so that, people who are coming in from outside get to understand the culture and the legacy of our group. So, these are few initiatives that we have taken to ensure. In addition, we had created a concept of work from home newsletter which was circulated to all our employees daily. The work from home newsletter featured our employees and a few stories. So we made sure that all the new joinees had an opportunity to also share about themselves through the work from home newsletter, and through that newsletter they also figured about other departments and the activities that are happening, which they could participate in. In fact, we had a few new joinees also participate in some of our events that we held during this time, which is, we did a talent show, actually did two of them. So we encouraged them to put an act together, and it was received very well. So, you have to make sure that you're not, you're including people who are joining new and giving them an opportunity to, get to know others, and also for others to get to know them, even though it is virtual. So that, those are some thoughts and practices that we have implemented at our end.
And how can new remote workers continue with their online training and build some sort of trust and rapport with their team leads?
So we do encourage our managers to have a regular cadence with their teams, and that gives a good sense of direction to the team members. And it's especially important because you don't have day-to-day chit-chats that you perhaps would have had an opportunity of at the when you were in office. Right. So a bit of that can be replaced by a standing meeting, and that gives a good sense of direction to the employee as the person starts out new. So this is one practice that I would encourage managers to implement in their teams if they've already not done so. On the employee front, it would help to regularly get in touch with the manager and ensure that in the first 30 days, in the first 60 days, the person is seeking inputs on the grasp of the role, and is understanding nuances, that person may have picked up if the person was in office, by having a regular dialogue with the manager. And, to the manager, I would say, make sure that you create, some kind of informal channels for the team to connect with each other. So, the standing meeting could be a very formalized structure where you're talking about the work that you have to accomplish. And in addition to that, if you just want to have some informal get together with the team, it's really helpful to do that. And that helps for the new employees also to settle in better and to understand the team. In fact, I had two people join my own team during this time, and they were very apprehensive because they were joining a team without knowing them. And, there was some bit of anxiousness ahead of their joining. But then the informal chats that we have, I have a session in the evening, it's called Chai Pe Charcha, really helped in getting to know each other better, and, makes work a bit fun because you don't talk about work in the evening. We just talk about everything else under the sun. It's also a good platform for people to just share, what's going on in their mind, their anxieties. So, it's basically a time that we have created to let out steam, if you will. And it helps the new joinees also to know you personally, and not just through the work-related conversations.
Interesting, you talked about doing informal chats and what you did with Chai Pe Charcha, but other ways how a leader can lead remotely during should any new joinee who joins the company, should the team lead interact with them every day? How should they micromanage? How should a leader look at building more transparency with their employees during pandemic times?
So I would never recommend micromanagement as a way. to manage a situation. But yes, very, I think check-in points are important. And, in fact, I would even suggest that you create a calendar of sorts for the employee to kind of meet with others, encourage them to talk to stakeholders during this time, make sure that the person is introduced within the department and the group so that the person can pick up and, can start conversations with their broader set of team. And, I would say that the check-in is important, not just by the team lead, but also by the person who's one-over-one manager to ensure that there is, adequate comfort the person feels in the situation. And also knowing about, Rohit, it's important to know about the circumstance or the situation of the employee. If the person is staying alone, you have to sometimes also, it's very challenging times for everyone. So you need to understand the situation around and make sure that you're fully aware of how to support the individual, not just, through work and through getting the person up and running in the system, but also provide the security and emotional support if required during this time. So yes, regular check-in is important. If it takes 2 times a day, 3 times a day, do it. Of course, each person has their own, way of settling in. Some need more hand holding. Some are smart to, run fast. So you may have to, after the first 1 or 2 weeks, you may have to revisit your approach. And that's what I would encourage people to do.
Correct. And, Tata Group is a big company. How is Tata Group looking at hiring remote workers?
So I think it was a very seamless move from managing all the recruitment activities face to face to a completely offline mode, online mode, sorry. So in fact, I think it's much faster, it's simpler because you're not asking people to come to your office. You're doing everything on a call, like we are speaking on a call. Right. I think it's become more efficient, if you ask me. Right. What we do anticipate, over a longer period is for some of our companies to even think about remote working as the way to go in future. Nice. So, that does open avenues of a larger talent pool, being accessible to you. So, if you're not looking at your office being office location centric, you could perhaps go and hire from cities that you've never targeted because, you wanted people to move over to a city which is Mumbai or any other place, right? So I think that will really change the game for some of our companies who can look at remote working on a more permanent basis and beyond the pandemic. And that's something that we are gearing up for. Of course, use of technology has been seamless. And I think the effectiveness of interviewing through, the collaboration tools has been very high. At the same time, I do tell the leaders that we need to ensure the same rigor is maintained and, the same details are sought when you're, recruiting remotely. So that's, and, of course, another aspect that we have tried to emphasize more on is reference check, because you're not getting to see the person face to face. We've enhanced that, so we do a reference check in addition to the normal interviewing process, which is there ahead of, it's not the background verification reference check I'm talking about.
Correct. And but do you see that the engagement scores are rising in the last couple of months, or what can a HR leader do to, or a team lead do to get more engagement among their employees?
See, I mean, I believe that engagement, Rohit, should be led by people. While HR is definitely a catalyst in that process and needs to take active interest in the process, but the engagement through this time needs to be led by people totally. And it's important to know what appeals to people. Initially I remember companies were very actively trying to promote learning, and then I started reading in newspaper death by webinar kind of news, right? So I think it's important today to ensure that your ears are to the ground. You are hearing what people have to say. You have, I would call it empathetic listening, to ensure that, you're not seeing the individual. So you have to really understand the context in which the person says what they do. And I think some of those conversations really help you in determining what needs to be done, what kind of activities will work. So I'll give you an example. The first few weeks were so stressful for people that, we were very quick to put together a program around mindfulness, and which was very well appreciated. And, I had already mentioned about the work from home newsletter. Through that newsletter, we opened a lot of channels. People started writing in, they started giving ideas. Some of them even offered some kind of thinking. So we kept improving our initiative by inputs through the team that we received. It was also a good opportunity for us to keep connect with people. So, I'm not sure if, and we've not done a pulse to be able to tell you that. I'm not sure if engagement is high. If the number of hours a person is putting into work measures engagement, I think, it may be high, right? Because, you definitely see people working a lot longer, and that is also sometimes concerning, right? It's getting to a point that, without a break, in normal situation, you would have had people taking vacations, day off, going for a vacation outside, family. None of that has happened. And I think, those aspects will certainly impact the overall mindset of our people. And one needs to create solutions to ensure that, you're taking care of different aspects of an employee, not just the work, but also how they must be feeling. And, if you need to take initiatives to ensure that you give them time off, just today I was talking to my team, and, I offered to keep one day free of meetings so that, you end up clearing your inboxes, because if the whole day you are in back-to-back meetings, you're not able to do that, and then you end up working late. So, those kind of things may need to be done locally by team leaders to ensure that there is no burnout. So, engagement scores may be high, and I do understand globally when there was a study done, but I anticipate that it will eventually dip if the situation continues, and one needs to be prepared for that, or maybe even ensure that we are giving adequate break to people to manage their well-being.
Right. And at the same context, wanted to understand how a team is looking at measuring performance. Since we're not working physically in a 9 to 5 work setup, how the team is looking at, or the HR leader is looking at measuring performance in such a setup.
So, the performance should always be measured based on the outcome,
right.
And that remains the same. There is no change to that. How you are proactively managing performance in today's context is where a shift needs to happen. And just as an example, I talked about having a regular cadence with the team. And I think it's very important today because there are shifts which are happening in the way we are working, and all the more reason that the team knows which way we are headed. And for that, having a regular discussion with the team on overall what you're focusing on is very important. So how a team leader should view this is by ensuring that there is a daily connect, as I earlier mentioned, and there's a daily connect on what we need to focus on today, an agreement on that, and then keep chipping things slowly on that front, and taking a stock at the end of the week to ensure that there is progress. At the same time, I would say there needs to be appropriate understanding of the capacity of an individual. Because you don't see the individual, you need to make sure that the person is not burning out while working on some of the tasks that you may have agreed to close on a regular basis. So, at the end of the year, it will be the outcome which will determine performance assessment of an individual. But you can help the individual by ensuring that there is clarity on what needs to be achieved and by when, on a more frequent basis than before. And that, I think, is the mantra to, especially in the remote working time.
Correct. And, you did mention that, there could be few verticals who could work remotely, but, there might come a time, a couple of months down the line where employees would have to go back to work. So what can companies do to make sure that, employees safely return back to work, and how many, what percentage of employees should start moving back to offices?
So it depends on the layout of the office, Rohit, pretty much. And I think the safety, security, of course, you need to make sure that you take necessary precautions as people step into office. You create norms, you educate people about, not just how they need to manage during the office hours, but also beyond that, so that you're not exposing the rest of your staff if someone is careless. So, a lot of pre-education and awareness needs to happen, not just to the employee, but also their families. I would also say that companies should look at who perhaps could come in to work. Of course, there is a job requirement, and I think that is important, but also knowing, whether the person is taking public transport, or if the person has anyone, having comorbidities in the house, or if the person has elderly parents, a small child, or somebody in their home is in essential services, having high exposure. For example, doctors could be one that have high exposure right now, who are serving, in COVID hospitals. So, knowing that background really helps in planning carefully, and ensuring that, the office capacity is seen in the light of social distancing norms. So if it means that you call 1 out of 3 people, do it on a rotation basis, that's what one should do. In fact, on Saturday, one of our employees called me and was just chatting up and was suggesting that initially we should, in fact, start with a few hours instead of the full day to ease people into, a different situation, because they are used to now working from home for some time, and it may be tiring, challenging for them to come, day one. So, there were suggestions. And I'm sure that as we start to look at office resumption, I'll get more suggestions from the team. So I think, again, I would say ears to the ground are important. You take inputs from people before you devise a strategy. I think it will be much more effective. And make sure that, you're planning to capacity. And, while the government guidelines exist, you can be lower than the government guidelines if your office space doesn't have adequate measures of social distancing.
Correct. What's your favorite business book?
My favorite business book?
Yeah.
I recently read a book. It's actually not recent. It's called Powerful, and it's by ex-HR of Netflix. That has been a very good book for me to read because it did help me rethink some of my thinking around HR. I'll just look up the author, and Patty McLeod. Yeah, that's the name.
We'll put that in the show notes. Do you follow any HR leader or CEO whom you believe that some of the listeners should also follow?
I follow quite a lot of them. I do read a lot as well. So on my read list is many companies who are into research around HR space. So some of the favorites that I have is, of course, there is the Deloitte access that they have on HR sensing tools. I'm a regular to go and access those research reports. There is Josh Bersin that I follow as well. So yeah, these two are people who come to my mind immediately. And of course, I follow many more and I'm interested in generally understanding what's happening in this space, and whatever comes as a good read on LinkedIn is what I end up reading about.
Correct. And what is the one piece of advice you would give to young HR leaders who want to build a career in HR and who just passed out of business schools during these tough times?
2-3 things I would say. One is make sure that you build expertise early on in your career. It is helpful and very useful before you start going broad. So that's one piece of advice I'll give. The second one I would say is ensure that you have adaptability in the way that you work. So I think adaptiveness is going to be very, very key for any leader or any employee going forward. And I would say that it's a very important quality, to have in a professional going forward. The third thing for an HR person would be to ensure that, we are able to understand the basic requirement well, which means that, a lot of times I feel people are just going after the fad or the latest buzz without even understanding what it does for them and their business. So, keeping the business and employee interests at the front of any process change, any decision that you take will really help you throughout. So that's a compass of sorts that one should have. You should challenge your process. The process is not designed for us. It is designed for our customers, which could be either a business person or an employee. So I think these are some, tips which are simple to follow that I would leave for the young generation.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights. What is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about the work you're doing?
Sorry? Yeah, LinkedIn would be the best way to reach out.
Correct. Thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed speaking to you.
Thank you so much, Rohit. I also enjoyed the conversation. It was refreshing.
Thanks for listening to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for new episodes.